first thing I want to say about this is these results were developed back in January. So all of our boards, all of our commissions, all of the employees of any national association group were asked to complete it. This was aggregated by 5x5. This is one of the groups Mark McPeak works with. This is really a valuable resource. They did it all for free. So if you see Mark and Casey Pontius also worked on this, let them know. So I'm going to walk through this and just to kind of whet your appetite and get you to think about this. What we're doing on the agency side is we're trying to develop a coherent set of goals, basically something like a 2030 plan, and trying to leverage our strengths and try to do something about our weaknesses. So just take a look at what's on your screen. First off, notice that our main strength was a commitment to doctrine. That's what people picked up. Very close to that is true to the Word of God. A lot of folks talked about community and unity. Then you get down to strong leadership, a mission emphasis, investment in youth, gospel and evangelism, organizational structure, heritage and history, and then colleges. And so you see it kind of go down like that, but commitment to doctrine was all the way across. And so some of the things we want to think about is, what do we do to maintain that? What do we do to take that commitment and pass that from one generation to the next? And so keep that in the back of your mind. So those were the strengths. So when you come to weaknesses, number one was education and training. Number two is lack of a shared vision, and there's not a big difference there. Division among leaders is 27.27. Lack of resources, unwillingness to change, narrow-mindedness, a lack of young people, lack of loyalty. Then a smaller part, dying churches, need to plant churches, a lack of diversity, secular emphasis on music, a lack of identity, and needs updating. So you can see that they're ranging all the way to 35 to 3.9, but even if something ends up at a 3.9, then, a fair number of people mention that. So keep that in the back of your mind as well as you think about our weaknesses. So then we ask about opportunities. And so a clear runaway winner was younger generations. Then you come down, you get education and training. Remember, this was before COVID-19, but improving technology was seen as an opportunity, as was Free Will Baptist identity, unity of departments, then resources, revitalizations, diversity, and so forth, all the way down to a role of women at 4.05, seen as opportunities that we should seize. So then we looked at threats. And so our folks see as the biggest threat is the cultural hostility that we're experiencing here. These are mostly folks in the United States. Neglecting of Free Will Baptist heritage is another threat that was found, not involving youth. Lack of vision, no unity, no Free Will Baptist involvement, churches closing, politics, lack of ministers, theological apathy, financial struggle, church attendance, aging, no discipleship, charismatic practices, and then lack of missions. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do is kind of look at this, and maybe we can use, this is where you could put something in your chat thing if you had a different idea. Maybe we can use our coach Facebook site and basically just come out and say, okay, I think we could have a goal around this or a goal around that. And remember, I'm working with the directors at the same time. And our aim is to come back with 3 to 4 goals, and then to line up with some objectives under that, and then go at that particular direction. So, for example, we might say that we want to strengthen our Free Will Baptist identity. Okay, so that's like an overarching goal. And so then we come back with an objective. Well, what can we do? How can we do? What are some activities we could do to help with that? And so an objective might be to strengthen our associations. And so then we could come back and I would put a question out on our Facebook site like, hey, how can we strengthen associations? And we just leave it there for a week. And then people just put up various ideas about how we might do that. And then we as a group or a body might come together and attempt to do that. So you have any thoughts on any of that that come to mind? And you could unmute yourself if you didn't want to type it in the chat box. And Ryan, are there any chat questions yet?
No.
Okay. Our guys are not very chatty today, are they? Any thoughts on any of that? Well,
I'd be curious what you think. The lack of vision.
It hurt me a lot, Daniel. It hurts. It just so I think when you go in and look at it, I was picking there, but when you go in and you look at it, and what people are saying, I think they want us to have like overarching goals that all of our departments, that all of us can kind of agree to and work on together. And I think it's a good idea, and I think it's something we can do, so and some of you have been to the you went to the first coaching training, and you remember Dr. Dwyer and I talked about the book. So I said, Dr. Dwyer, hey, he had like maybe 25 books. And I said, hey, can we cut that down to 10 books? And, he and I had a discussion. Somebody may say this book is better or that book is better, but we came back and said, it's just more valuable that all of us are focused on these 10 books. And so part of shared vision is, okay, guys, we're concentrating on trying to have coaches available to our churches. Coaches, we're asking you to know these 10 books, talk about these 10 books and use them, maybe do seminars at them at your association meetings. And so I think, I hate to use one of the word synergy, but I think we get a little bit of synergy, if you will, when coaches are talking about that, promotional leaders, national leaders, when we start using some of the same language, thinking same thoughts, I do think we start to get a little momentum and it works. So I do think that's a good one, Daniel. And I think that's part of what can come out of this 2020 plan, 2030 plan, as we go forward there. Anything else you think about? Well, I'm going to be working some with the directors this week. So why don't I work with them? And the way I see this is we come back and we're like, okay, this is a goal that the directors came back with, and I'll put it on our Facebook site. Then you guys look at it and say, well, I think it should be tweaked, or I think it should be this way, or I think it should be that way. And think about that. The other thing, and I think it's also good to go ahead, and it's hard not just think about objectives, but based on what they said and based on what you all have said, sometimes I can see it's promotional guys saying this. We need to focus on our associations. And so that would be an objective. But if it's all right, I'm going to go ahead and put on the our Facebook coach page, what are some ways we could better utilize our associations, and just kind of get you to throw out some of your thoughts on that. That's one of the things we're going to talk about at the leadership conference. And I think it's a way to get some of this information out, and let's just start throwing out some of the ideas. And it's like we're already working our 2030 plan before we really get our goals set up, but we know that that's going to need to be something that we focus on. Does that work for you guys? Thumbs up or thumbs down? All right, that's good. All right, let me throw a couple of things just real quick. I encourage you to look at Pew Research's social and demographics report. It came out on May 14th, on the cusp of adulthood. So as we do this 2030 plan, I'm going to encourage our directors to look at this, but this is also more of a church thing. I'm just going to run through a couple of things they picked up on. One thing they talk about Generation Z, but and where the different generations are. But one thing that's real clear, Hispanics are truly on the rise, and we want to think about that as we do consider our 2030 plan. And I think you can see we're already kind of working that way. This is a more educated group. The Gen Zs are, when you think about their parents and they themselves. They are also they're more likely to want an activist government. So you may say, what does that mean? It probably means they want a more activist church. Now, by activist, we're probably not talking about political activists. We're talking about really like impact your community. So they're going to be a group, or they are a group that want to see people really involved. You do see things in here that are concerning, and we want to think about not offending them. So they tend to really think that climate change is real. And so like it wouldn't be a good idea for a pastor to make a joke about how it's not real because you're just unnecessarily offending them. They're more likely to lean toward Democrats. They're more likely to not have a problem with same-sex marriage. And so you see where we'll have more explaining to do and teaching to do when we've talked about like biblical ideas when it comes to marriage and when it comes to gender. So they're more likely to know someone using these gender neutral pronouns. And you've probably seen people sign their email, he, she, it, or whatever. You know, they're more likely to be of those folks. So this kind of research is what we want to look at as we're examining, you know, what to do and how we set up our 2030 plan and to reach out to these particular groups. Notice their number one platform is YouTube. Number two is Instagram. 3 is Snapchat. So we've got a YouTube, Instagram channel. We probably won't do Snapchat, you know, but Facebook is interesting. It's across demographics. Twitter, not so much, you know, not real crazy about that. So Instagram and YouTube are really the things for them. And they do go on Facebook for the sake of their parents. There's an old survey out there by Pew, 2015, that's also helpful for us to look at. You probably can't see this, but Free Will Baptists are listed here. Now, as you look at it, they're listed as less than 0.3. So they did measure us, but we're not large enough to be able to measure how our influence on the population. So this is showing percentage. Actually, we're up there at the top, less than 0.3 under Baptist and the evangelical tradition. So what Pew did was they looked at percentage of the population from 2007 to 2014. And you can see there's the biggest gains were in the nothing in particular, atheist, and the agnostic group. And of course, Buddhist, and this is all the people that grew. So this tells us, this is right here, these top three is where our evangelistic efforts are going to need to really heat up. So the nothing in particulars are, you know, these are a lot of people that hit and missed with church in the past, and they really don't believe anything. They don't know Christ. But now we've just got a harder way of reaching them. The atheists are rising and the agnostics. And so I think we want to look at really getting skilled at trying to reach folks in those particular areas, because that's going to be where the needs are going to be in the future. So those are the biggest gains. Only gains in the main lines were of anything of a non-denominational flavor to it. And so that's a theme you see throughout. In evangelical Protestants, it's only the non-denoms that are gaining as well. And so you see a theme of not really committed to anything, not a real identity or anything like that. The biggest losers, the Catholics, the Mormons, Orthodox Christians, Methodists in the mainline tradition, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians. So they're all losing ground. The biggest losers, and this bothers me also, among the historically black churches were the National Baptist, African American, AME, and then the Pentecostals. And so those of you who've been in secular settings, your best friend was usually African American. And so they're more likely to be a Christian. What you see is even in the African American community, the churches are losing ground in their percentage of the population. Among evangelicals, the Southern Baptist had the greatest losses, but we're probably matching that or maybe exceeding that. We just weren't big enough to really measure. And then you've got the Lutherans and so forth, evangelical Lutherans losing as well. So we look at that and we're trying to figure out how do we adjust. And so I think the non-denom is actually is a threat to us, and is actually is part of this whole nothing in particular. So it's a nothing in particular of a different stripe, if you will. And so as you think about what we want to do in the coming years, how we're to be more effective, I think there's a lot there for us to consider to try to push back on that particular slide and really to be able to have our particular impact on our nation.